Meanwhile, more than 100 miles away, it was the first week of the trial of Republican former Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder and former Ohio Republican Party Chair and ex-FirstEnergy lobbyist Matt Borges. They're facing racketeering charges for their alleged roles in a bribery scheme that saw $61 million flow to dark money groups to help Householder become Speaker. In exchange, prosecutors say he was expected to pass and protect a $1 billion nuclear power plant bailout for FirstEnergy's plants. My Statehouse News Bureau colleague Andy Chow is following the trial and was there for opening statements. So Andy, what were some of the big moments in the opening statements that you saw?
Well, it started with the U.S. prosecutor, Emily Gladfelter, and the very first things that she said was that Larry Householder sold the Statehouse. Now, you have to remember the members on the jury, they're coming in here with fresh eyes, so they don't really have the perspective that we have been following this case for 2.5 years. And so they really have to lay out all the details of the case, and she did so throughout an hour of opening statements with a slideshow, with pictures, really trying to detail the money that was flowing from FirstEnergy into Larry Householder's alleged 501c4 through Generation Now, and then by doing so, using that money to gain power as House Speaker, and in exchange passing the nuclear power plant bailout bill, HB 6. And then on the other side of things, for the Matt Borges side of things, some of the more interesting things that the prosecution laid out was showing the actual check that Matt Borges paid to Tyler Furman, the person who was working on the referendum campaign, for inside information. So we're seeing a little bit more of the curtain pulled back and connecting the dots of everything that we've known for the past 2.5 years. Now we're seeing more of that evidence being rolled out and the connecting of the dots and more of the people who were involved in this alleged scheme.
Now, Householder and Borges have separate attorneys. They had separate opening statement presentations. Is that correct?
Yeah, they had separate presentations, and first you saw the lawyer for Householder go up there. He gave a little biography about Householder, how he grew to power, trying to paint him as a political outsider who's constantly winning, constantly being successful. And then when Matt Borges' attorney went up, he pointed over to the Householder table and said, there's a universe of difference between Larry Householder and Matt Borges, and there's a universal of difference between all the players in this bribery scheme case and Matt Borges, really trying to create separation between Borges and everybody else. And even us, when we first heard that Borges was arrested, we were even surprised that he was involved in all of this. But the case that the prosecution's making is that there's the bill-making side and the referendum side, and Borges was involved in the referendum side.
And I think the claim was also made that they didn't even like each other, which is not the point of this.
Right, and that Larry and Matt don't like each other, but also that Matt Borges has never really been a big fan of FirstEnergy's too, saying that one of the FirstEnergy executives once called Matt Borges a boob. So there's all sorts of trying to create this separation and trying to create somewhat of an animosity between them.
So what else happened this week? We obviously had some weather. We had an illness.
Yeah. So Special Agent Blaine Wetzel is the one who is now taking the stand. And he is the one who wrote the affidavit, who put the charges forward. And he is, once again, connecting a lot of these dots. And he started off by talking about this infamous trip to D.C. with Larry Householder and FirstEnergy executives. And this is really trying to set the scene for the prosecution to say this is where a deal was struck. This is where the deal was made. The prosecution has said over and over again, when you're talking about a bribery case, you never hear two parties say, I'm giving you this money and this is for a bribe. They're saying that's not what we're going to hear. But instead what we're going to hear is this detailed plan that they came up with, that FirstEnergy and Larry Householder came up with in D.C., sitting at dinners and on the plane, to allow him to rise to power and pass HB 6. And I think what we're going to continue to see those dots being connected throughout the years. And I think one of the more interesting things that we're going to see coming up here soon is hearing these secret recordings that we've heard about for 2 years now, where undercover agents were talking to people like lobbyist Neil Clark about something about sports betting. And these agents were playing this role of people who wanted to get sports betting passed in Ohio. And allegedly, there's recording there where Neil Clark says, if you want to get something passed in Ohio, you put money into this 501c4. Larry Householder will see it and he'll get your legislation through.
Now, we won't be able to hear from Neil Clark, the lobbyist. He took his life in March of 2021. But who might we hear from? I mean, there are a couple other people who have admitted guilt. For instance, former FirstEnergy lobbyist Juan Cespedes and householder strategist Jeff Longstreth. FirstEnergy also admitted to guilt. Generation Now did as well. Who else might we hear from?
So we're going to hear from those two co-defendants. We're expecting to hear from legislators, former legislators, most likely Dave Greenspan, who has said that he went to the FBI because he and other legislators were feeling the pressure from this group at the time called Generation Now that nobody knew about, feeling pressure from that group through dark money to vote for HB 6 at the time. And so we're expecting to hear from them. And really something that was interesting that came out was that we're going to hear from former householder associates. Some of these people are people that we in the press knew about because if we wanted to get into contact with Householder, we had to reach out to these people in order to talk to him before he became Speaker. These are associates that the prosecution said took in tens of thousands of dollars as salary through Generation Now, checks that they showed on their PowerPoint through Generation Now. They will be testifying as well. It'll be interesting, once again, connecting all those dots.
And again, there are no recordings in federal court. There are no photographs in federal court, but you get a chance to see Householder and Borges when they arrive and kind of their demeanor throughout this whole trial. How are they handling this? How is it going for them?
It's pretty extraordinary. When we walked into the courtroom, well, first of all, when Larry Householder walked into the building, I was taking pictures of him. Usually people keep their heads down or ignore you. He came up to me, started talking to me, asking me how I was. Then in the courtroom, he started having a conversation with a couple of us, a couple of Statehouse reporters who were there to cover him. We talked about how things were going, and he talked about how he believes this trial will play out, and he says that he's feeling very confident. He's very relieved that this day has come. He says he's not nervous, and he believes that the truth will be provided by his defense attorneys throughout this trial. Matt Borges was the same way. He said that he's also feeling relieved and optimistic about the trial.
And Larry Householder showing up one day to court wearing a Bengals wool hat.
Yeah, he's really taking on the theme of being in Cincinnati right now.